Lily, thank you for being my very first tarot reader. I was interested in tarot before I got into astrology or anything like that, just because I knew a lot of people that had, messed around with the cards or something like that. I just recently got my first tarot deck, my own
Oh,
personal
wonderful. Which
one.
one?
It is White
Oh,
Sage Tarot.
Sage. Oh,
It,
that's a great deck.
I got it because I'm a Gemini, and the lovers is some seahorses, and I really
Beautiful.
like seahorses. Anyway, that's how I
Have you
discovered
have you
tarot.
used it yet, or are you like working up to it?
I used it one time. I don't think I shuffled it well enough. I was getting some repeat cards, so like I was getting like cards in order. But I haven't had anything. I've kind of know my mission right now, so I don't really have anything that I need to ask about yet. Could change tomorrow. Who knows? Uh, but that's how I got my connection to tarot. When did you get your connection with tarot cards?
Oh my goodness, it was. I think I was a young teenager, probably 13 or 14. This is like back in the early 2000s, and my dad actually got me my first tarot deck. Like, I had never heard of tarot before, I didn't know anything about it, and he just really encouraged me to use tarot and kind of explore, and it just kind of grew from there, actually.
When you first started reading tarot, did you have a semblance of like I was just toying around with it? When did it really start to speak to you? Was it that first time or did it take a while?
It was definitely a journey. I got the tarot deck and I didn't quite get it. I mean, it's a tarot deck is quite large. I mean, there's 78 cards. They all have different meaning, they all have different artwork, the archetypes, and then you kind of get into the different spreads and how do you use these. And I remember when I first got my tarot deck, it was seemed very overwhelming and a little bit confusing. And I did like some readings for a couple years, but I didn't. It was more just like playing around. I didn't actually. I didn't know if I what I my opinion about tarot or what I believed or didn't believe. And probably for the first like 7 or 8 years of using tarot, I was like a healthy skeptic, I would say, where like me and my friends, we'd pull cards and then we'd like have a laugh if it worked out. But I didn't really approach it from like a place of like spiritual humility or reverence. And it probably when it changed for me when my mindset really shifted and I really understood kind of like the power of tarot was when my brother was going on a big trip. His girlfriend was in the Peace Corps and he was going to another country to help support her. And he wanted to know how his trip was going to go. And so I pulled a bunch of cards for his year, like predicting he was going to probably spend like 2 years there, and it predicted his death. Like he died on the month that I got the death card, and death doesn't necessarily always mean death. But I remember when I pulled that card, and it was in October, and then the cards for like November and December were angels. They had angels on them. And I remember him just being very shocked, like very scared. And he was ready to just cancel his tickets. Like, I'm not going to go. Like, he knew that it was a very serious reading and he felt scared. And I of course dismissed it. I said, "Oh no, death just means rebirth. Like it's just going to be a great trip for you." And I really diminished what the cards were actually telling me. And not only did it predict his death like down to the month, but also down to the week as well, because I use the cards to also have like timing. And because I'm a little bit I was always curious about the accuracy of tarot. Every single reading I've ever done, I actually write in a book. And any of the readings that I do, like a predictive analysis or anything like that, I definitely write them down. And so I did the reading for him in May, and he died in that October. And I think when I opened my book to see that it had actually predicted his death accurately, that's when my mindset shifted, and I I really just reevaluated the way that I thought about spirituality and the world, and it humbled me in the way that this had been kind of like a entertainment tool. I had used it as a kid, like for fun, and then now it like shifted my mindset. And since then, I have been, my background is in science. I'm an engineer. And so I've been very skeptical and resistant to really embrace the elements of tarot. And it has been just time and time again, I see the evidence over and over and over. And it got to the point where I just kind of had to accept that there was something happening here that I didn't fully understand. There's some energy or element, connection to the universe, whatever you want to call it, that is beyond our understanding. And when we get further into the sciences, I think, especially when you get into like mathematics and physics, you realize that there's more about the world that we don't know than we do know. I've been reading tarot for about 20 years now, and I'd say the last 10 years is really when, like I said, that spiritual humility that I've experienced, where I don't know how the cards can be so specific or so accurate. I don't know how that works, but yet it's something that I'm confronted with time and time again. And for me, the really big turning point was my brother's death.
That is probably the most heartbreaking and insane way I've ever heard someone have to make that conclusion. You get what I mean? I'm actually kind of shocked by that. Wow. Because, I mean, when I got into topics like spirituality, it was mostly to confront death, which I knew I never confronted before. I never had anyone like in my immediate circle or anything, and it freaked me out because I knew it was
Right.
there. So
Yeah.
I wanted to figure out how to not be so scared of that
Mm.
reality. And I think that that's the unifying factor is that fear and loss puts our rational brain into a point where it's like you have to be confronted with a higher meaning or a higher layer of reality to things, especially if it's communicating with you.
Right.
That's crazy. So,
Yeah.
how long did it take to? I mean, lead me through your mindset as you're kind of first stumbling across this was a real communication that happened, and now I'm kind of put into a new belief style, or however you'd phrase it.
I mean, it was pretty radical. I mean, like before that event, I had, we had made predictions, and it was like this person's going to break up, or this person's going to get a job. And it was the normal things, and it would work out. Like the prediction would be accurate, tarot would be accurate, and it was always very entertaining and fun, and oh yeah, I wonder why. But like the deep skeptic in me was always very hesitant to just jump in, because I felt like, I don't know, I think there's a stigma around the spiritual community, and there's a stigma around, not wanting to be woo woo, or, wanting to not getting like taken for a fool, right? And so for me, I found a lot of resistance to fully embracing what tarot was telling me. So when that event happened where I predicted my brother's death, and again, it was down to the month and the week. It wasn't like I pulled a ton of cards and statistically the death card came out. And the other cards that were surrounding the death card indicated that it would be, an element that he would leave his body. And like I said, the cards after it were angel cards. Um, and like temperance and the star, and they have angels on them. And so I sat down, I really reflected, and I went on my own like spiritual journey, after my brother's death. He died in Micronesia. I went to Micronesia. I lived on the islands. I traveled the world. I did like a very intense spiritual awakening for probably about 2 years. And tarot for me, in my personal opinion, the universe or spirit or energy, however, it's always wanting to communicate to us. It's always wanting to connect with us. Tarot is not, magic. It's just a tool. And I think there's an element of that spiritual connection. If tarot is the conduit that you can be open to having a spiritual experience or having, like a supernatural experience, then that's the tool that you're going to resonate with. And for everyone has a different connection. For some people, it's prayer. For some people, it's meditation. Everyone is different. There's many different paths through the forest, so to speak. And so when that event happened, it really, like I said, spiritually humbled me. And I did come to that realization that this is something serious, and I need to take it with the reverence that it is. And my dad, who got me tarot cards, his, he was a medical doctor. He was an emergency medical doctor, and he had experiences in the emergency room that defy logic, that pointed to a spiritual connection. He had patients that would die, and then they'd come back to life, and they could tell him of a conversation that he had with a nurse in another room. And he had experiences that he would share, and he'd say, again, he comes from a scientific background. He's a medical doctor, like, and he would be the first one to tell me, like, I don't know everything. We don't know how the consciousness works or fully how life exists. Like, there's so many things we don't know. And when I'm confronted with evidence that I get in tarot, like the messages that I get or the predictions or the connections that I honestly, there's no way that I could ever know them, that I could be this accurate. I have to have that humility as I come forward, and it, in a way, it's very beautiful, because we're all longing to have that spiritual connection. We're all longing to feel that purpose and that love that comes through. And when you get a really good tarot reading or a really deep spiritual experience, you feel that love. And death, you said your journey with death is, at its core, it's incredibly loving. And I know that doesn't make sense to everybody, but death is, it is a return to home in many ways than one.
Yeah, a lot of great points to bring up there. I do find that I had this in my last interview. I talked to a Vedic Nadi astrologer. It's a Southern Indian type of astrology. We had this topic because he came to a conclusion much like you. It wasn't like a great story of the spiritual awakening that was filled with happiness and hugging trees. It was a very chaotic mess that, like, it was the thick fog that he went through and then finally found like an oasis. I also agree that I call it Saturn energy, but that limitations, when you want something to go your way and it doesn't, that's when we grow. We always
That's
grow in that. Doesn't feel good though. Um, all my tarot readings are mean. Are all the cards mean?
that. So that's a very, like, I remember when I first started reading tarot, I would actually get nervous if I saw like a reversal, and I had a lot of anxiety, because you want the reading to be positive. Everything is sunshine, unicorn farts, rainbow cupcakes, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as you kind of really, as you kind of transcend the fact that life is difficult, right? Once we fully accept that life is difficult, then we're no longer fighting it, and now it just becomes a part of this is. And the wisdom in tarot is, when you do get cards that are mean or negative, the wisdom and the power is to look at them from empathy and compassion, and see them as like harbingers to tell you how to grow, or how to prepare, or how to handle adversity that's coming in life, because life is hard. Life is full of adversity. Life, and it only gets harder, by the way. It's not like we reach a plateau where everything is perfect and easy. Every single decade brings new challenges, and with each challenge, whether it's rejection or death or, a loss or grief or addictions, there's all sorts of things that come into the play of life. And the negative cards, when you learn to really accept them and you learn to really embrace their messages, they actually become some of your favorite cards in the deck, because you want to know. You want to know how to grow and how to build that resilience within yourself. So if you're getting mean cards, it's more like an indication of the areas that you can grow and heal in.
Yeah, that's always my readings, or what I get is quit moping. You're stepping on your own feet. That's always what I get. When you get into tarot and reading for other people, is there like a process you have, or a breathing technique, something that prepares you energetically, or can you kind of just step in and out?
That's a great question. So I've been reading for about 20 years, and I started, so my brother passed away about, 14 years ago now, and around 10 years is when I started reading for other people. When I started reading, I would say like reading and charging people. So I had been doing readings for other people for a long time, and every tarot reader is different, and you kind of do like trial and error, like how about this meditation technique or grounding technique, or should I drink water? And, everyone has a different style. And I've been reading, you know, consistently for clients for about 10 years now. And what I have found that really helps me set my mindset is I'm a complete empty vessel, right? I go for a walk, I recharge in nature, I clear my mind. My readings are typically an hour long, so they're quite intense, and I have to be my full present self for each client. And I can't have any distractions. I can't be thinking about, the bills I need to pay or the doctor's appointments I have later. Like I am completely empty. And so when I pull the cards and I'm connecting with a client, it's very important to connect like authentically and without any of your own personal baggage, because then you can influence the cards. And that is something that I've kind of like learned trial and error over the years. That's not how I started out. I used to think I could just like pop open a deck and pull out some cards, and I found that my readings were not very accurate. My mind wasn't very clear. And I really, again, that spiritual humility, I had to approach the cards with reverence, with honor, actually. And when someone sits down with me for a tarot reading, honor is a huge emotion that I have, and gratitude. I'm deeply grateful that they're giving me this time and space. And I'm honored that people are sharing that vulnerability with me. And I think that puts me in the mindset where my ego is down, and however it is that you need to lower your ego is the best way to do tarot. So for me, being out in nature, lowering my ego, and then having gratitude, humility, and honor is the right frame of mind for that,
Yeah,
because it's very difficult.
I found that tarot in particular hates ego. And I mean, for good measure. It's pretty much most people's issues. But that's good to know. I mean, that's kind of the process when I was first doing the CIA Gateway tapes. First thing you got to do is put all of your worries in a box. So what they teach you. So I think it's probably important for any spiritual practice for us to just like, I don't know. I mean, not thinking about bills. It's certainly a good start.
It's a good start. But you do, and it takes practice, and everyone's different. But that would be my advice for people who are really wanting to see like a marketed different change in the way that they connect to the cards, because it's not there's a large part of intuition that plays with tarot, as I'm sure you're aware. Like it's not like a card means specifically this thing and it only can mean this one thing, right? When you're really in tune and your ego is down and you're really just receptive, you get these like bolts of, gnosis, like these bolts of understanding that come from, your intuition. Some people call it psychic ability. Everyone's different, but like when you're in that receptive state, you can get more detail, more context, more specific than any meaning from any guidebook could ever give you. So it's very important that ego, subduing that ego, coming to the table with humility and integrity and gratitude is huge.
You have to go through that ego death in order to even think of that. Because, I mean, working with tarot all this time, I'm sure you've encountered skeptics. where
Oh yeah.
yeah,
I
do you
love
have any story
skeptics.
do you have any good stories for us about, I don't know, encountering one in the wild, or maybe a client that
Oh,
booked you with the intention of nefarious intentions or something?
oh, well, okay. So let me um I guess there's like a couple ways to answer that question. So first of all, I believe tarot's for everybody. Like I don't care if you're a skeptic, if you're an atheist, agnostic, or if you're like a fifth level shaman. Everybody is welcome. Like everybody. I love reading for skeptics and I love reading for spiritual people. I am not an authority figure. I am not the Pope. I'm not here to preach to someone and tell them what to believe or not to believe. So when someone comes to me, if a client comes to me for a reading, they don't have to believe what I believe in order to get value from tarot. And I love reading for skeptics. If someone comes to me and says, I just want a secular reading, like maybe they believe in like Jungian psychology or, the placebo effect, or they just want sometimes very secular atheistic people for tarot. They see tarot as a creative mental exercise where we're just having a creative discussion by the fate of the cards, like the random shuffling of the cards. Let's have a creative discussion about a particular topic to help them see problems from a different standpoint. I love that. I don't need other people to validate my beliefs in order for me to exist. Right? I'm happy to read for anybody at any belief system. I'm like I said, I'm not a pope. I'm not a preacher. So people that come to me for that are skeptics, and if they want a secular, non woo woo style reading, I love to do that, and I'm happy to do that. In terms of like people that are wanting to like discredit or pull a prank or anything like that, I definitely in the beginning, I used to get people like that. Because when I first started reading, I was reading like in college, and I would go to Halloween parties as a tarot reader, and I would, pull cards. And when people believe or not believe, like I'm not offended. Like I don't care. Everyone's entitled to their belief system. And if that belief system is what's working for you, if you are finding value in that, then I'm happy for you. And I'm grateful for you. Like that's wonderful. That's your path. And yeah, not everyone has to like me or like tarot. That's perfectly fine. And but the people who are maybe like more malicious or pranksters or something like that, like I know that they mean it in good jest, and I know that people are coming from a place of curiosity. And sometimes curiosity, when you're ignorant to a certain element, like a lot of people are just ignorant to tarot. They don't know what it is, and they just see it in the movies or whatever, and Madam whatever, and that's fine. Like that's just their experiences, and um and like I said, I don't need everybody to like me or to like tarot. It's fine. So I have had people that are critical and judgmental. Specifically like religious people can be very judgmental, and they tell me like you're talking to devils and
Yeah,
demons and
around
very
here,
scary
I live
things.
I live in like the Bible Belt, and around here I've noticed that's what people equate it to, is like a Ouija board.
Right.
And I'm like, no, because I've done some research on tarot, and it has nothing. It's based off a card. Like the cards come from a card game, and the intuitive reading is the whole point that people are mystified by. They can't really understand that part of the equation, which is
It is.
hilarious. I always think that some people are meant to be in this earthly experience and not be bothered by the by the fundamentals of this stuff. I just I don't think it's like in their mental capacity to even be a part of that, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not an athlete. It's not part of my athletic.
Right.
Like we're not all meant to be everything. So I think
Yeah.
skeptics are
And
just a part of it.
they are. And I mean, I was a skeptic for so many years. Like, I was a skeptic for like 7 years, like I said. And I think skepticism is wonderful. I think that it's great. And honestly, if I If I was doing tarot readings tomorrow and they turned out wrong, then I would stop doing them. Like, I wouldn't do them if they didn't have value.
Yeah,
Like, that's the thing.
people genuinely, I remember being in this headspace when I was 15 to 20. You think this is like they found their way to get money, and that's why they're there. So you feel like it's just one big mastermind, like they figured out a business scheme. But then when you
Yeah.
really get into the spiritual, like I don't want to be crazy, but like I've had direct experiences that most people just will never had or have not had yet. I don't want to
Right.
be this way. I wish I had zero ethics and I could just like financially gain from people, but instead I'm like making YouTube videos about spirituality. You don't want to end up there. It's a direct experience that like boxes you in. And
Yeah.
without that direct experience, I mean, you know what I mean? That's what got me was direct experience. I think that's pretty much what's only going to get anyone else.
Yeah. And everyone's on a different path. Like, everyone's on a different journey. And that's okay. It's, and people that are like religious, that are, critical of alternative spiritual viewpoints, like, that, if going to church or whatever, if that's what works for them, then I am happy for them, and I want to encourage and support that.
Getting back into tarot specifically because I'm curious about this reversals. So
Yeah.
what's the up with this? Because I hear that some people are totally against reading reverse cards, and I've always thought that was just a part of it. Have you ever encountered, I don't know, drama between tarot readers between that, or is it just something that's kind of lighthearted, like a better way to use the tool?
If that is the way that it works for you and you feel confident in that way, um then that is the way that you're meant to use the tool. That's my opinion. I do not. I think it's very important that we don't treat tarot like a religion, right? A religion has rules, it has guidelines, it has, you're supposed to do this and not this, or you don't work on the Sabbath and you can't eat pork and don't wear white after Labor Day. Religion has rules. Tarot does not have rules. This is not a religion. We're not the Pope telling people what to believe or not believe. So if someone wants to use reversals and they use it and that's fantastic and it works for them, then great. If someone doesn't, then that's also great. Personally, I use reversals because I like the nuance and the depth in the reading. But yeah, I think that the only drama I've kind of seen in the tarot community is that some people come from rigid institutions where they have a hard time accepting that tarot is an individual practice and that the spiritual journey is a personal one, and they feel like, well, we need to make rules about what you can read on and what you can't read on and what decks you should use and what decks you shouldn't use. And those people, I know that they mean well, but they're missing the point of the fact that this is not a religion. We're not a religion. We're not a group that has like a set of belief systems.
Yeah, that makes sense. At least makes sense from what I've encountered with tarot. That it. Well, we'll get into that. What I want to go to in a second. I actually have another question more specifically about tarot before we get woo woo. A little bit. Well, let's do our last casual question. How in depth do you get with people during tarot readings? Like, do you get into the sensual stuff? I know that your experience, unfortunately, had to do with like passings and stuff. Do you get really into passings or maybe communication from deceased? I'm not sure. What do you? Well, how deep do you go?
So that's another great question. And so I like to go as deep as the client feels comfortable, right? So I'm not going to pull information that they don't want to talk about or that they want to keep private. Or, like I said, I respect the belief of my client first. If they believe in, spirituality and in talking to deceased loved ones or whatever, then I support that and I will connect with them on that level. If they don't, then I respect that as well. So I only go as deep as the person that I'm reading is available to go.
Yeah.
Um, if I some of the harder lessons that I've experienced, or the harder readings that I've done, is like shadow work that goes into childhood. And that is like pulling out a root that is like really, really deep, that the tentacles kind of spread to every other part of their life. And that you find a lot of resistance. You have some clients that are very open to healing childhood trauma, very open to saying, I know that I've got, a rotten root somewhere that I want to pull out. And I will go as deep as they want me to. I will pull like specific childhood memories, or we'll talk about specific things. Um, and and I don't need them to give me that information. I will pull the cards, and the cards will tell me what to go, where to focus. But I don't push the client farther than they want to go. If they're not ready for that, then the reading's only going to go as far as they can handle it. So to answer your question about the depth and the nuance that we go into, it really just depends on the client. This is their session, it's their hour. I'm here for them. I'm the empty vessel, here for them, here to support them, whatever that is. Some people, they spend the hour just entirely talking about themselves, and I don't even get to pull cards. Like, and that's fine. Um, However, I can help and support someone in their phase of life at their particular junction of belief is what I want to connect to. Um, yes, some people can handle the intensity of doing a very deep, intense reading, and that there's usually crying. Like, it's usually very intense. And I'm happy to go. I'm happy to go that distance, but it's up to them.
Yeah, I never, ever, ever, ever cry. Even when I need to, it's an issue. But when I had my energy healing, I actually recorded that and posted most of it. I didn't do all of it. I cried maybe for 2 hours straight. It's
Yeah.
intense. I do highly recommend that if anyone's ever with a spiritual healer, to just like they
Exactly.
crying is like what that's what they always get. So
It's release. It's such a release. And like I think that is the biggest thing that motivates me to do tarot. Like I am an engineer, right? I don't have to do tarot reading. Like I have a job, I make good living, like I don't have to do this. I do it because I love helping people. Like I genuinely love helping people. I When you're with a client and you've helped them like move past heartbreak or grief, or to reevaluate a problem in their life, or to find their purpose, like when I have readings like that are so deep and beautiful, and sometimes there is crying, most likely there's crying, but that is what encourages me to do this work. I think back to when my dad bought me my first deck of tarot cards. He spent his entire career as a healer, right, as a medical doctor, healing people. And he firmly believed that we have, the mental body, the physical body, but then we also have a spiritual body. And doctors, they heal the physical body, but we need to nourish and replenish our spiritual body as well. And tarot is one way that you can do that. And when I see people healed, like the transformation is unbelievable to me. Like again, every single time I do a reading, I'm humbled. People will come and their anxiety will be like up to here, and they'll be like, I have a problem and I can't see my way through it, and I'm at my wit's end. And then within an hour, their breathing will calm down, their heartbeat will slow down, their anxiety will dissipate, they'll have that clarity, they'll have that vision. And I've never seen people healed so drastically like I do in a tarot session. That is why I do this. And people will tell me, like, I actually got to sleep tonight. Like, thank you. And I again, I'm so humbled and I'm so honored to be able to be a facilitator in somebody's healing. And that is why I do this. But it can be very intense for sure.
yeah, it's a hard process in today's modern world because there's so much negative information you could conceivably consume in a day. You know, I mean, it's infinite. So that's beautiful that and it goes to show. I think that the tides may be changing a little bit on the topics of spirituality if it's so easy to find people like you, engineers that also have that spiritual side to them. Because I come from the Bible Belt, and let me tell you, everyone here is Christian
Yeah.
besides the doctors.
Interesting.
It
I
is
have to
very
say,
interesting, isn't it?
yeah, a majority of my clients and majority of my clients that I've been reading for, that I've kept over the years, majority of them have master's degrees and above. Like they're incredibly intellectually competent, emotionally mature, successful people. And yeah, a lot of people in the medical field. I have a lot of psychologists, a lot of clinicians, and I think tarot is naturally gravitating towards them because you have to have empathy in order to get value from tarot. People who are narcissistic or have a personality disorder or people who are emotionally immature, they struggle with tarot. They cannot get a tarot reading because a lot of tarot is asking you to like do self-reflection or have empathy for the other people in your life. And people who, like you said, are doctors or nurses or already have a strong sense of empathy and high emotional intelligence, they get the most value from tarot because they have the capacity to do so. And that's been my experience as well.
If you're emotionally immature, pretty much how I would see it, if you can't take criticism from your boss, constructive criticism from your boss, you're not going to like tarot cards.
Yeah.
Because they're, I mean, it's going to be like a mirror. You can't
Yes.
run away from what you literally are, even if you
Yeah.
justify your actions in some weird way. Uh,
Yeah.
so, speaking of being empathetic, let's say you get a reading that's extremely cautious or something that says, you may be homeless or something of that impact. How do you go about telling people that?
Yeah, that is, I think, where the art of tarot comes in. Everyone has a different style. Some tarot readers are just like blunt and direct and severe, and others will like cushion it within compliments and like, you're just on your spiritual journey. So that is, I think, up to the style of the tarot reader. For me, I have, yeah, of course, I've had cards that, that indicate disappointment to the querent, to the client. And I believe, especially after the experience that I've had with my brother, where I basically downplayed his reading instead of having the courage to tell him the bad news that I saw. Instead of, I lacked with my brother's reading that predicted his death. I lacked the courage to say what I genuinely saw, and because I was afraid. And I think that's a very natural response. And when you get a reading that indicates, like, you're not going to get the job, or, your husband is going to divorce you, or, that cancer is probably coming back, right? Those are very hard readings to have. And because of my experience with my brother, I have spent many years focusing on how to say those things in a way that is blunt and direct but with compassion, and I always preface it by letting them know this is just a reading, like this is a card reading, this is what I'm seeing, and let's lean into it. If When I see reversals or negative cards in a reading, I like to pull more, I like to dive into it. I'm like, here's a splinter, let's pick at it, let's pull it out. And in the process of facing our fear or facing the disappointment or facing whatever it is, it actually, that whole process allows us to not be as afraid. So if we do pull a card and it says, yeah, you're going to be homeless, I say, let's lean into it. Let's look at that a little bit harder. Let's explore this topic. And in leaning into the discomfort, that is when we get real breakthroughs. Real breakthroughs. That's the real value in the tarot reading.
Yeah, just like
So,
we began talking, you got to go through that negative stuff to really grow. Uh,
yeah.
I just had this thought while we were talking about that. I think it's kind of funny. Out there somewhere is the meanest tarot reader.
Oh, yeah.
Like that one, that someone has that title,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
so funny.
No.
Okay, so before we end this interview, because we got through a lot of the basics, kind of like if someone didn't really know about a tarot reader, if because it's so easy to find information on like the tarot cards themselves, you can just Google it. I mean, that's what I did.
Well, I mean,
Um,
I did want to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I did want to, like, you talked about like the origin of the cards and stuff, and I kind of did want to talk about that a little bit more. In like what they are, where they came from, because I think a lot of people are very confused about what tarot is. Um, so yes, they are a deck of cards. They used to be, like a game that was played in Italy, or some people say it originated in Egypt. Like everyone has different opinions. But when you really look into what tarot genuinely is, it's not a deck of playing cards. Tarot is a collection of archetypes. Archetypes have been around since the dawn of humanity, right? Archetypes are the fundamental experience that every single human that's ever lived and ever will live will experience. So, like, everyone has a mother, everyone has a father. That's like archetypes. Those are our shared commonalities as humans. Everyone lives, everyone dies. Everyone has experienced, friendship and heartbreak and, good fortune, right? Every single human on planet Earth has experienced those archetypes. All tarot is they took these ancient archetypes that have been around for millennia, way before Italy even existed, and they categorized them and they assigned them to cards with artwork. So, like, they took the first 22 that kind of talk about the big themes in your life, like birth and death and mother and father and your hopes and your dreams and all that stuff. They put that in the first 21 or sorry, 22 cards. And then there's the suits. Like wands represent your spirit, your passion. Cups represent your emotions. Everybody has emotions. Swords represent your intellect or your mental landscape. And pentacles represent like the earth or the physical qualities, like your body and your money and your house. And they have all these archetypes. And that's, I think, where people get caught up in the magic of tarot, is that they're like, how am I connecting with this so much? And you said earlier that tarot is a mirror. Archetypes are mirrors. It's the universal mirror. And these archetypes existed way before tarot existed, but some genius realized that our subconscious, which communicates in imagery and artwork, if we can connect artwork with archetypes and put it together, it can be incredibly powerful. And that's where tarot originated from. That's where it's come from. People get caught up with saying, like, oh, well, it was invented in the 1400s. And well, no, like, archetypes have been around forever. Someone just assigned them to artwork and put it in a deck of cards so that we could communicate and connect with these archetypes on an intense level. And I think that is something that's missing from the dialogue, the history of tarot.
Yeah, I mean the construct as we know it existed from the 1400s. The information it contains has been around before us, I believe.
Exactly.
So now that we have a good understanding on the tarot, let's get a little bit into the woo woo before I let you go, because I
Okay.
like to go deep, because I'm full crazy now. So
I love it. I love it.
when you think about tarot and connecting intuitively, what is your perspective on what you're tapping into for this knowledge? Is it like Akashic records? Is it something that's more connecting to a specific entity, universal? How would you describe that?
So everyone's experience is different. So I can only speak for myself. But I actually feel like when I'm shuffling the cards, I actually feel tingling in my hands. Like I feel a physical like response. That's how I know when to stop shuffling. That's how I know that it's connecting. And then that's been with me from day one, that I just thought was really like bizarre. So I physically feel my hands reacting. And then when I look at the cards and I have messages for me, I feel like I'm connecting to like a higher plane of my own consciousness. I feel like some people call it the higher self, because the the information that I hear or that I see, sometimes I get visions, sometimes I get words. Um, it sounds like my own voice. It doesn't sound like I'm talking to like a spirit guide or somebody else. It's not coming from someone else. It's literally, it feels like it's coming from me, but it's coming from an elevated state of my consciousness that's beyond a state that my normal consciousness is at. The only way I can really describe it is like when you're dreaming, you're still conscious, but you're in another conscious state. And like we experience many different conscious states as humans. This is like documented by science, right? When you're dreaming, when you're driving, when musicians are like playing music and they're in the flow, their consciousness changes. Our consciousness is altered during different states of being. And for me, when I read tarot and I look at the artwork to me is like highly reactive. And it might be because like I'm an artist and I really connect to artwork. And so when I look at the artwork in the card, it transports my consciousness into a more relaxed state, and I feel like a different level of consciousness. Just like you know how you're different consciousness when you're dreaming. Um that's how I experience tarot. And like and I get like just crazy messages. Like I can like the last one that I got that was crazy was I was doing a reading and I got a book title that popped out at me. It was Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And I was like, I don't know why, but I want to share this with you. Have you read that book? And the lady's like, that is the book that I'm reading right now.
Yeah. That's so
Blows my
strange.
I'm like, I don't know where that came from. It's not in the tarot cards. It was just, and I don't know this person. I don't know her. I only know her first name. I don't know anything about her. So like I get those experiences where it's just it's right direct. So for me, it's another level of consciousness that's triggered by the artwork, and it feels like it's coming from my own spirit. It feels like it's coming from yeah, a higher plane of consciousness for me.
Right. So, from your perspective, it is that higher self, which, from my understanding, yeah, we we as humans perceive in this third dimension, but ultimately, people call it like raising your vibrations. I guess you
Mm.
could put it. Uh, you can ascend into that upper realm. Can't really stay there, which sucks. I wish I could be that connected all the time, but I gotta work.
You'd be exhausted.
Yeah.
You'd be exhausted. It's like getting hit with a fire hose. Like when you're really receptive to information, it's like the feelings, the thoughts, the vision, like it's like getting hit with a fire hose. And at least with art, when I see the art on the card, it allows me to focus. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be I wouldn't want to be in that state.
So you get physiological reactions from the tarot cards.
Yeah. And I think again, like as an innate skeptic, it was very like affronting to me. It was very confusing to me why I had this reaction. And I like I said, I've had that from day one. And I would hand other people my cards and I'd say, do you feel like the tingling in your hands? Be like, Lily, you're crazy. But that's something for me, like personally, like it literally feels like I feel it in my hands when I and everyone's different, but yeah, that was very bizarre to me for sure.
That's kind of crazy. That's almost like an anime or a comic book. As a young child, you're given tarot cards and you can like physically feel the difference, but other people around you are like, "What are you talking about?" And then it plays out like years later. You become a tarot reader. That's a
Oh,
great
it's
story. I
it's such a journey.
this has been a great interview. I really appreciate you giving me kind of this perspective and going into it with me as because like I said, it's hard for people in this internet age with all this very straightforward information. Just Google anything you want. People assume that
Yeah.
that is what life is, but yet it's so much more chaotic. And and people who are rich, they aren't happy because they don't have this spirituality covered. And really, that's what we're just lacking as a society. I feel like is spiritual coverage, like cell
Yeah.
phone coverage. Like we don't have spiritual coverage.
Yeah.
If you could speak to the entire world right now, what would you say to them? Just one thing in its current form.
I mean, I don't know if I'd feel like I'm the authority to tell the entire world anything. Um, I just would speak a message of love. You know, life is hard. We're all trying our best. We're all humans. We're all figuring it out. And the only the only thing that really matters at the end of the day is love. It's not money, it's not the car that you drive or the job title that you have. It's the only thing that's worth experiencing and holding on in the world. And love for each other, love for ourselves, and having that empathy to say like life is hard and it's okay. Like it's okay. We're human. That's what I would say is there's never any judgment from me because we're all doing our best in the best way that we can.
Yeah, we all want to be the good guy. No one wants to be the bad guy. Unfortunately, as you said, there's not enough love to go around, so we kind of keep raising bad
You
guys.
have a spiritual connection.
Connected?
Connection
There's an almost spiritual connection.
that transcends the physical realm.
Spiritually.
Spiritually.
It's spiritual.
Personal and spiritual growth.